Coming up, what happened at Bournemouth Pier yesterday and what led to the deaths of a teenage boy and a 12-year-old girl? Will the COVID inquiry get to see Boris Johnson's pandemic WhatsApp messages? And the miraculous rescue in Everest's death zone? That's all after the break. A man is being questioned in connection with the deaths of a 12-year-old girl and a 17-year-old boy in the sea off Bournemouth. Mystery surrounds the tragedy, which unfolded in front of a beach packed with half-term holidaymakers.
There was panic, everyone was running, and as you can imagine, it was a very busy day at the beach. There was a lot of chaos, but everyone was just so concerned.
Also this lunchtime, the clock is ticking. The government has until 4 o'clock this afternoon to hand over Boris Johnson's pandemic WhatsApp messages to the COVID inquiry. Another fall in house prices. Is the market headed for a serious slump? And saving life at 30,000 feet, the extraordinary rescue from Mount Everest's death zone.
This is the ITV Lunchtime News with Geraint Vincent.
Good afternoon. Police say they are still investigating exactly what caused a number of swimmers to get into difficulty at Bournemouth Pier yesterday afternoon. A total of 10 people were pulled from the water. 2 of them, a 12-year-old girl and a 17-year-old boy, died later in hospital. A man in his 40s has been arrested on suspicion of manslaughter. In the last hour, police have given an update saying there is no suggestion of people jumping from the pier or jet skis being involved. Here's Callum Watkinson.
It's not yet clear what happened on Bournemouth Beach on a Wednesday in half-term, but we know it left 2 children dead with 1 man in custody, and speculation raging about what happened, which the police moved to quell with a statement today.
I am able to tell you, early investigation indicates that there was no physical contact between a vessel and any of the swimmers at the time of the incident. I can also confirm there is no suggestion of people jumping from the pier or jet skis being involved.
The 17-year-old boy and 12-year-old girl who died are not related, and the man who was arrested was on the water at the time. Hundreds of potential witnesses have been asked to come forward if they have information that could help. Iman Kamar had taken her baby son for his first visit to the beach.
There was panic, everyone was running, and as you can imagine, it was a very busy day at the beach, and to vacate literally hundreds of people from one side of the beach to the other side, they did it within minutes. So there was a lot of chaos, and I think everyone's first reaction was just the horror of what's happened, and we were all praying for the safety of whoever's been in distress.
The police say the families are being supported, but in one of Britain's busiest resorts, it's hard to imagine a worse start to the summer. Callum Watkinson, ITV News.
Well, our reporter Ellie Pitt is in Bournemouth, where the police have just given that update on their inquiry. Ellie, what else did they say?
Well, Geraint, we know that the 10 people who were recovered from the water were not part of the same group, and those children who have died were not related. The 17-year-old boy was from Southampton and the 12-year-old girl was from Buckinghamshire. The Assistant Chief Constable was also at pains to make sure that we understood that they had not been jumping from the pier into the water, and that the man who's been arrested, who's in his 40s on suspicion of manslaughter, was not on a jet ski at the time. Though she did say that he was on the water and wouldn't be drawn on whether he was on a vessel and what kind of vessel that was. As you can see, Bournemouth is packed again today with families here for their half-term holidays. We understand that there will be more lifeguards and members of the RNLI here over the coming days. There's an investigation involving the police, Maritime Agency and Coast Guard looks into exactly how the children got into difficulty here yesterday.
OK, Ellie, many thanks. Now, the clock is ticking. The government has less than 3 hours to hand over Boris Johnson's private WhatsApp messages to the COVID inquiry. The inquiry is asked to see conversations between the former Prime Minister and his advisers during the pandemic. Well, our political correspondent Libby Wiener is in Downing Street. Libby, the government's in a difficult spot with this, isn't it?
Yes, well, the government set up this inquiry into the pandemic to try and learn lessons as to what happened. Is it really now prepared to withhold evidence, to refuse to cooperate with that inquiry? Well, we'll find out in a few hours' time. As you say, the Prime Minister this morning was in Moldova meeting European counterparts, talking about security and immigration. But remember, he was the Prime Minister who, on taking over in number 10, promised integrity, professionalism and accountability. So this is a very awkward situation for him. It's been made more awkward by the fact that one of his predecessors, Boris Johnson, suddenly announced yesterday that he'd handed over all his WhatsApp messages and diaries and notes to the Cabinet Office, and he wanted them to be handed over unredacted to the inquiry. Now, whatever his motives, and remember, he wasn't too keen on his own lawyers sharing information with the police. In fact, he sacked them last week. But nevertheless, it does make things even more difficult for Rishi Sunak. A former government lawyer that we have spoken to says that while the inquiry chair, Barbara Hallett, may want to see everything because she believes that she will be the best judge of the context, the fact is government ministers are worried about setting a precedent.
So if the government is seen to concede to that kind of argument by handing over the material, then I'm sure it is concerned that by doing so, it will have conceded the point for every other minister and their diaries and their personal messages and so on. So there is quite a lot at stake.
Well, the Labour Party have already accused the government of indulging in a cover-up. I think if it does come to the issue being decided in court, those accusations will be harder to rebut.
Libby, many thanks. German prosecutors have said they can't say yet if evidence collected in the latest search for Madeleine McCann is linked to her disappearance. Several objects were found when they searched the Arade Reservoir in the Algarve last week. Well, Chloe Keedy is in the Algarve now. What more have they had to say, Chloe?
Well, yes, Geraint, it's exactly a week since that search finished of the Arade Reservoir, which is about half an hour's drive from Praia de Luz, the resort that Madeleine McCann went missing from 16 years ago. Police sealed off an area of that reservoir. They spent 3 days digging, clearing the undergrowth with heavy machinery, searching in the water and overhead using drones. And German police have confirmed this morning that a number of items were seized as part of that operation. We understand this lunchtime not more than a dozen items, and police have said it's not yet possible to say whether any of the items are actually related to the disappearance of Madeleine McCann, but that they will be analysing them over the coming days and weeks. Now, the reason that search was requested by German police is because they have in their custody a man called Christian Bruckner, who they believe is responsible for abducting Madeleine McCann. He is a prolific sex offender, a convicted rapist, and he's known to have frequented that reservoir around the time of Madeleine McCann's disappearance, although he has always denied having anything to do with it. That search came about as a result of a tip-off. We'll now have to wait and see whether that tip-off enables police finally to move forward with this case and get some answers for Madeleine's family after 16 years.
Chloe, thank you very much. Now, more bad news for homeowners. House prices have continued to fall in the last month. That's according to Nationwide, the UK's largest building society. They say prices have fallen at their fastest annual pace for nearly 14 years. Prices in the year to May fell by 3.4%. That's the biggest fall since July 2009. Month on month, prices fell by 0.1% after a 0.4% monthly increase in April. But the average home is still worth £260,736, roughly £40,000 more than before the COVID pandemic. Well, Nationwide is predicting moderate price falls and a relatively soft landing, as senior economist Andrew Harvey told us.
I think certainly it is good news in the sense that if house prices do fall this year, that will improve affordability conditions, but we also need mortgage rates to come down as well in order to enable that to happen. So that we're not quite there at this point. So we are seeing house prices decline, but the decline in prices has been offset by the rise in mortgage rates.
Well, our economics editor, Joel Hills, is in Swindon this lunchtime. Joel, moderate or not, the consensus view is that the market does have further to fall.
That is the consensus, Geraint. You're absolutely right. The only disagreement is over the scale of the drop. But forecasting, as you well know, is a bit of a mug's game, even at the best of times. And it has to be said that we are in slightly uncharted territory here. The fact is that interest rates have risen incredibly aggressively over the last 18 months, and the full force of those rises have yet to be felt. 2 million homeowners before the end of this year will have to refinance their mortgage deals. They are in for an incredibly rude shock. Last week's inflation data was so grim, Geraint, that expectations around where interest rates are heading has changed too. Higher for longer is the message, and what we've seen in the last week is banks and building societies scrambling to reprice their mortgage deals. According to Money Facts, the average 2-year fixed rate mortgage deal 5.5% today. A year ago it was 3%. It's little wonder then that house prices are falling. Housing sales are falling at an even faster pace. And we learned something interesting today from the Bank of England. Net mortgage lending fell in April by a near record amount. That is to say, households are repaying more than they're actually borrowing. But before we get carried away, it's worth remembering two things. First of all, there is a chronic shortage of housing in the UK, which is why we're standing outside a building site. And also remember this, that history tells us that traditionally, as long as people hold on to their jobs, they manage to hold on to their homes. Unemployment is low and is expected to remain so.
OK, Joel, many thanks. A missile attack on Kiev today has left 3 civilians dead, including a mother and her 11-year-old child. Russian forces hit the capital earlier this morning, leaving most of the damage in Kiev's eastern district. Debris fell on a children's hospital and a block of flats, also damaging 2 schools and a police station. And Australia's most decorated living soldier, Ben Robert Smith, has lost a historic defamation case against 3 newspapers that accused him of war crimes in Afghanistan. The outlets were sued over articles alleging he killed unarmed prisoners while serving with Australian Special Forces. A judge said 4 of the 6 murder allegations, all denied by the soldier, were substantially true. An inquest has opened into the death of 2 teenagers who died in an electric bike crash in Ely, West Cardiff. The court heard both died after suffering head injuries. Kate Lewis is at the coroner's court this lunchtime. Kate, what else have we learned?
Well, the inquest here today heard how 16-year-old Kyrie Sullivan and 15-year-old Harvey Evans had both been seen riding on an electric bike, and a short time later were found by a member of the public on the road having come off the bike. Now, a post-mortem has shown that both boys died as a result of blunt head trauma, with Harvey also suffering blunt trauma to his trunk. Their deaths sparked a riot, and on Wednesday of last week, the Independent Office for Police Conduct began an investigation into what happened in the moments leading up to the boys' deaths, after CCTV footage showed a police van following closely behind the boys on the bike. That investigation is ongoing, and subsequently the date for the inquest won't be set until it concludes.
OK, Kate, many thanks. Labour has suspended the Swansea West MP, Geraint Davis, from the party after claims of inappropriate behaviour towards his colleagues. He says he does not recognise the allegations. Our political correspondent, Harry Horton, is in Westminster with the latest. Harry, what more do you know?
Well, the Politico website has spoken to 5 women who claim that Geraint Davis subjected them to unwanted sexual attention. All of the women were significantly younger than Geraint Davis, who is 63. Now, 2 of the women are fellow Labour MPs. One alleges that Davies pressed his leg against hers in a way which made her feel deeply uncomfortable. Both raised the behaviour with party officials, according to the report, but did not make formal complaints. Now, the report states that Geraint Davis's behaviour was an open secret in parts of the Labour Party. This morning, I spoke to fellow Welsh Labour MP Stephen Kinnock, and I asked him if he'd heard about Geraint Davis's behaviour.
Westminster is awash with rumours and counter-rumours, and I genuinely just try to not get engaged in those rumours, because at the end of the day, what you need is to base decisions and actions on facts and proper investigations.
Well, Geraint Davis said in a statement today, "I don't recognise the allegations. If I have inadvertently caused offence to anyone, then I am naturally sorry." Labour described the allegations as incredibly serious. They've suspended Geraint Davis and urged anyone with any complaints to come forward.
Thank you, Harry. Still to come this lunchtime, a warning system to alert people about extreme hot weather this summer, and a dramatic rescue at 30,000 feet. But first, today has been described as a landmark day for organ donation as Dahi's Law comes into effect in Northern Ireland. It's named after Dahi McGowan, a 6-year-old boy who is in need of a heart transplant. It means adults in the country will now have to opt out of being an organ donor. Northern Ireland was the only part of the UK without this system in place. Sarah O'Kane is at Stormont. Sarah, how significant is this change?
Well, look, this is a big moment for Dahi McGowan's family. They've been campaigning for a change in legislation in Northern Ireland since 2018. And as you explained, what it now means is every adult in Northern Ireland will be considered as a potential donor unless they opt out or simply choose not to. And really how this all came about is 6-year-old Dahi McGowan. He himself is on a waiting list and he is hoping for a new heart. The new legislation is expected to ensure that there are now more organs available for those needing a transplant. Around 140 people are currently on the waiting list here in Northern Ireland. And this big event was happening here at our government buildings at Stormont. But the reality is there's no government here, no decisions are being made here. And this legislation was in fact delayed. It took the Westminster government to intervene and push through Dahi's Law. Dahi's father, Marcin, is just happy it's happened.
Dahi is 6 years old. He has met the Prime Minister. He is a law changer. He is getting the freedom of Belfast City on Saturday, all at just 6 years old. As his daddy, I can't even describe how proud I am of him. I'm just so thankful that he's my son and that, you know, all this positive change is because of him. Although others have helped along the way, I don't think we would be here today without our Dahi.
Sarah O'Kane reporting in Belfast. Next, a new alert warning the public about hot weather comes into force from today. The system will use traffic light style colours to indicate how severe the heat is, so organisations can be more prepared. The alerts come after the UK experienced record temperatures last summer. Faye Barker explains.
This summer, a new health alert system's in place in England to warn the public and authorities that high temperatures are on the way that could damage health. So how does it work? Well, anyone can sign up by filling in a form online, providing an email address and selecting which region you'd like warnings for. Heat health alerts will run from June the 1st to the 15th of September. A cold health alert system will run over the winter. Well, there are 4 alert levels. Red, the most severe, means a significant risk to life, even for healthy people, and potentially a severe impact across health, travel and education services. An amber warning would still affect most of the population and have an impact on the whole health service. Yellow means the temperature could affect those who are particularly vulnerable, for example, people who are over 65 and those with underlying health conditions. Finally, green means no risk.
People should enjoy the summer. It's nice temperatures, going outside, temperatures are increasing. This is becoming a new normal, and the way that this hot weather impacts health depends a lot on how the people, on all of us, respond and prepare to this new challenge.
Now, you'll remember last summer was one of the warmest on record in the UK, with fires in parts of the country causing devastating damage. Climate change is likely to make heat waves more frequent, and experts predict this year overall is expected to be warmer than last year.
Faye Barker. Now, there is a place at the top of the world's highest mountains that climbers call the death zone, where temperatures get down to 30 degrees below zero and there's not enough oxygen to sustain human life. If you get stuck there, you're probably not going to make it down, which is what makes our next story so extraordinary. A Sherpa who came across a climber in Mount Everest's death zone and carried him to safety. Sharon Thomas has this report.
Trussed up and barely breathing, the man wrapped in the grey sleeping mat came to conquer the world's highest mountain, but it very nearly cost him his life. A Sherpa found the Malaysian national in his 40s shivering and clutching a rope in the area of Mount Everest called the death zone, where temperatures can drop to -30 Celsius. Galji Sherpa was guiding a Chinese client up the mountain when he saw the man suffering from severe altitude sickness. He convinced him to give up his attempt on the summit, saying saving a life was more important. He and a fellow Sherpa then took it in turns to drag and carry the man through the snow, down from 8,500 metres above sea level over the course of 6 hours to an area known as Camp 4.
That guy, he was about to die because I need to bring down to save him his life. I need to save him. That part was very dangerous part and very hard part, and all the rocky part I need to bring down to him on my back down to C4, and we are very glad to save his life.
Tourism officials in Nepal say this is a very rare and almost impossible high-altitude rescue. At least 12 people have died during the March to May climbing season this year. This man was lucky. A helicopter using a long line then lifted him to base camp. He's now back in Malaysia, knowing he owes his life to two fearless Sherpas. Sharon Thomas, ITV News.
And that is it this lunchtime. The latest Where You Are is next. Mary Nightingale is here with the evening news at 6:30, but from everyone on the Lunchtime team, bye-bye.
The warm weather continues. So why not squeeze the most out of the day? Heinz Tomato Ketchup sponsors ITV National Weather.
A very good afternoon to you. Split conditions as we slide into a new month. Cool and cloudy for some, warm and sunny for others. And this is the earlier satellite and radar picture. Some pesky cloud across much of northern, eastern Scotland, eastern England, encroaching into those northwestern counties and parts of the Midlands. Otherwise, better, brighter skies. That afternoon sunshine making all the difference after a cool grey start in many places. Highs of 22 or 23 degrees out of the breeze. Where we've got the breeze, well, a cooler, fresher feel. That breeze really quite chilly, particularly if you factor in that stubborn cloud across those central and eastern locations. A measly 12 or 13 degrees at best around the coast. And some late and low sunshine before dusk this evening, but the cloud remains in the east, becoming more widespread overnight. We keep the breeze, so any significant mist and murk at bay, and a better chance of seeing clearer skies to start the new day across the north and the west.
Heinz Tomato Ketchup sponsors ITV National Weather.